There's a bit of a theme with Chapter 2 in Paper Mario. You collect a lot of items to make friends and go places. Most of the key items are found in Dry Ruins, since many rooms are locked and you're met with a stone puzzle at the end. Each locked room requires a ruins key, and there are 4 of those total. I found it interesting that you can use any ruins key on any locked ruins door. The linear nature of the dungeon assumes you only have 1 key at a time, so there weren't any special instructions to make each ruins key totally unique. However, they will not work outside of Dry Ruins. It should go without saying that a large portion of the dungeon is normally inaccessible without the keys, but there are a few glitches we can perform to complete the entire ruins regardless. Well, it mostly revolves around one glitch, called LZS. This is a map of the Dry Ruins, and as you can see, I took some creative liberty with, MS Paint to sort of route out what the general plan was. If you're pretty familiar with this dungeon, this route may not make perfect sense. There are very important rooms we seem to be skipping over, and we're doing certain rooms out of what we can only assume to be the intended order, and while there normally is a small amount of backtracking in Chapter 2, we've got some weird zigzag movement going on. I think it'll make more sense once I explain LZS. LZS stands for Loading Zone Storage. It's a method of delaying Mario's transition into a room by performing perfectly timed jumps. The loading zone checks if Mario is on the ground before it actually begins fading out the screen, and then loading the next area. Notice how walking into a loading zone starts the fade out immediately, but jumping into the loading zone makes it wait until Mario lands. This is a very important detail because it can be exploited. If you jump toward a loading zone and let go of the control stick, then input the A button to jump the frame before Mario touches the ground, you will perform another jump before the screen fades out. Repeatedly timing frame-perfect A presses means you can delay the room transition as long as you need. The difficulty is, of course, timing them. Paper Mario runs at 30 frames per second, so each A press needs to be 1/30th of a second before touching the ground. Doing the input 1 frame too early prevents Mario from jumping, and doing the input 1 frame too late makes the loading zone activate as we are executing the jump. By the way, we lose control of Mario during the fade out. There's not really much interesting about jumping in place, which is why you'll often see LZS tricks involving movement. There's a problem though. Simply holding the control stick in the direction we want to go will start Mario's walking cycle, which considers Mario as grounded. This triggers the fade out and disregards a perfectly timed jump. The only workaround is releasing the control stick to its neutral position at some point in between each jump. If you input an angle 1 frame early to start Mario's walk cycle, you will start the room transition upon landing. If you input an angle 1 frame late, you'll hardly get any distance with your jump. This technically means each jump of LZS is a double frame perfect rhythm, since it involves the A input and the control stick input, both being frame perfect. Less important but still noteworthy is Mario's jump height, which has a few variations depending on how long A is pressed. Holding A and releasing it 1 frame later results in a short hop, which simply won't give us much distance with LZS. We will be maximizing Mario's jumps by holding the A button slightly longer. A must still be released shortly before landing though, in order for the game to detect the next jump. Otherwise it's going to register as A being held. There are also a few cases where Mario will not need to jump, such as when we briefly touch a ledge while falling. That works as long as we fall off the ledge in 1 frame. We don't want to start Mario's walk cycle. Applications of LZS are pretty versatile. It is usually used to exaggerate Mario's angle during the fade out, which gets remembered by the game, and gets applied as Mario walks into the next room. I think this occurs because the developers wanted room transitions to appear a bit more seamless. If the screen fades out while Mario is off-center, the screen reappears with Mario walking from that same angle. Using LZS to amplify our entrance angle enough can make Mario fall out of bounds, and this is sometimes used to skip sections of the game or set up other glitches. Devin released a really detailed video about this behavior, and I would highly recommend watching it for a more in-depth explanation. Another useful trait of LZS is the ability to combine certain actions with a room transition. Various endgame events differ in terms of priority, and from what I can tell, loading zones are pretty high on that priority list. For example, let's check the bush in Junior Troopa's playground, which reveals the first hammer. If you perform enough frame-perfect inputs from the loading zone to reach that bush, and activate it with yet another frame-perfect A press, we get locked into the cutscene of acquiring the hammer with LZS. You'll hear the leaves shaking, but the loading zone will take priority. That's all it takes for the game to give Mario the hammer, so this skips the Junior Troopa fight that normally occurs on the way out. We tend to see this event combining application less often than the angle skew, since this doesn't work everywhere. I mean, consider this. If you activate that same bush from behind rather than from the front, Junior Troopa skip will fail. Notice how normally, if Mario checks the leaves from behind, there's an extra animation where the bush falls flat, so we can see Mario holding up the hammer. That same animation doesn't take place if you're standing in front of the bush. In other words, checking the bush from behind will not give Mario the hammer in time before the loading zone takes us. Gotta check it from the front to make it count. The final application of LZS is the hardest to apply, and it's actually the one we'll be using to complete the Dry Ruins without any keys. We've already established that while a room is fading out, we have no control of Mario. He is in a unique state, however, where he phases through walls and other objects. It is a tight window before that next room loads, and we can't make any new inputs count, but we do know what direction he'll be going, toward the loading zone we have stored. Dry Ruins has a lot of convenient two-story rooms, so we can store the bottom loading zone, do a few double frame perfect jumps up top, and position Mario in front of the door we want to phase through. He will walk through the wall during the fade out, and the newest loading zone we touch will take priority mid-transition. Dry Ruins is somewhat unique in having a loading zone behind each door because they aren't truly doors. They're more like sliding panels. So this wouldn't work on just any door such as the ones in Koopa Bros Fortress. But as you can see, no key is necessary to drain the sand to the bottom room. That previous setup gets repeated for the next LZS, which happens extremely fast, and it's from top to bottom this time. It'll give us quick access to the Pokemummy pit. We are going to pause ahead of this next trick though, since it's a bit different. There's a block at the end of this room which will summon 3 Pokemummies when struck. Defeating all the enemies will drop down a key. To skip those fights, you could simply grab a key we already skipped, since any ruins key can open any ruins door. But we can't do that if we're aiming to complete this using no keys. LZS isn't much of an option either, because the doors are opposite each other this time, and there's no convenient way out of bounds. Keyword convenient. Luckily, we still have the option of using Lackluster, a partner we normally don't obtain until Chapter 6. I won't go on a major tangent here, but it is possible to skip Chapter 2 by sequence breaking the game. I used that power to obtain Lackluster before entering the ruins. Entering the desert for the first time automatically resets your story progress back into Chapter 2, with the ruins in an incomplete state, like at the beginning of this video. Despite appearing paper thin, Mario typically has a cylindrical hitbox. We're going to use Lackluster to obtain Clippy, a state where Mario's hitbox is fragmented, only appearing as a flat plane in the direction we're moving. Clippy naturally exists when Mario's side boundaries need to be disabled, such as when on a partner. The developers didn't want Mario's hitbox pushing Lackluster or Sushi around while we're controlling them. As such, the Clippy state gets disabled once we hop off. There are a few ways to preserve Clippy though, and we're going to do it by entering a battle with a menu up. If we hit the block to aggro the Pokemummies, we can hop on Lackluster to enable Clippy, and open an overworld menu the same time we trigger an encounter. The timing on opening the item or partner menu is sort of misleading and also frame perfect. The memory pertaining to Clippy will not be stored during the battle, which means Clippy will not be deactivated when we get off Lackluster by switching partners. With our abnormal hitbox, it's fairly simple to angle Mario up left against the lock, gradually maneuvering upright until he turns around and is pushed far enough into the loading zone behind it. Parakarry helps us across this gap, which leads directly to a treasure room containing the Super Hammer. This is needed to obtain the Diamond, Pyramid, and Lunar Stones found behind blocks the normal hammer can't break. There's a bit of a puzzle we need to solve here to properly align each staircase. Fastest way to do this is pushing the green switch down, heading upright to push the second green switch, and going across the top to press the red switch. What's more interesting is a small time saver we can do after, with our best friend LZS. We have to scale each step with Mario's jump anyway, so may as well store the loading zone, go across the room, and activate the treasure chest the same frame Mario lands next to it. As with most LZS exploits, this is certainly not viable for humans to perform consistently. but leaving the room as the chest opens will provide Mario the super hammer, and saves a few seconds of backtracking out. Every room in Dry Ruins is at an angle, meaning our entrance angle is heavily skewed by the super hammer LZS, and Mario falls out of bounds. Turns out we land below the area we just spawned from, right next to where we need to go. We could glitch behind the cracked wall in this room, but Bombette needs to destroy it since there wouldn't be a way back if it stays sealed. In the next room we jump down instead of falling down. This is because jumping off the ledge will lock Bombette's position until we land. If Bombette didn't stay put, she would fall off the ledge, and her bomb ability cannot be activated from midair. We need to use that as soon as possible, which is why we went out of our way to make sure Bombette is still on solid ground when we need her. Gotta save the frames. Breaking the stone block here will reveal a stone chomp. We came prepared for these fights with Thunder Rages, which will conveniently kill both in a single turn. The room we're currently in is a dead end, so once the battle concludes, all we need to do is pick up the Diamond Stone and head back out. This is somewhat precise, but Mario can turn around while collecting items, inching us a little bit closer to the exit. Our next goal is backtracking. With the super hammer in hand, we are heading back through a few rooms to obtain the Pyramid Stone. Notice how the door we used Clippy on is still locked, and Mario walked through solid collision during the room fade-in. This next chomp behaves a bit differently. Instead of popping out of the stone block, it will appear on the field. This is somewhat annoying because it makes it very easy to first strike it. First strikes are great in casual playthroughs, but in speedruns they waste precious frames. This is why I had Mario encounter the chomp while it was at the peak of its jump, rather than falling on top of it and initiating an unwanted first strike. Our second Thunder Rage will do the trick just fine. A previous LZS trick will need repeating so we can make our way back into the depths of the ruins. I think this one was slightly more optimized than the first time around. The ledge cancelled LZS was just on point this time. I will need to perform Clippy again too, and I purposely encountered the Pokemummy on the far left. Otherwise, it will chase after Mario while we're trying to perform the clip, and this can be an absolute pain to navigate around. Since that turnaround clip on the door lock was shown previously, I thought this time it was worth showing off that the room's bottom left corner could also be utilized for an out-of-bounds clip. The third and final stone chomp is beyond this section of Dry Ruins. Tutton Koopa is going to warn us again, but we have another key to skip using LZS, and it's almost identical to the first one. This probably saves the most time compared to other LZSs in the ruins, since the key we skip this time requires a decent amount of backtracking. Draining the sand will give us access to the Lunar Stone room. Unlike the other two chomp fights, this one is going to ambush us the moment we collect the item. That means we can exploit LZS again, this time to skip the fight. The loading zone will in fact take priority over the cutscene, but does not take priority over collecting the item. With all stones collected, we need to place them at the chomp statues, in the order of Pyramid Stone, Diamond Stone, Lunar Stone from left to right. This reveals a hidden staircase leading to the Chapter 2 boss, which also marks the end of Dry Ruins. These cutscenes are kinda long, so I am fast forwarding straight to the fight. Tutton Koopa is fairly easy to deal with, especially if we have Power Jump equipped, Paracarry super ranked, and Flower Points leveled up to 15. He has 30 health total, and we are capable of dealing 10 damage per turn with the Power Jump Shell Shot combo. Tutton Koopa falls in 3 turns, signaling the end of the chapter. I also want to make something abundantly clear during this fight. The Dry Ruins gameplay was not performed in real time. It's still me playing, but I had to go through this frame by frame, essentially logging my controller inputs each frame, using save states to undo all mistakes made along the way, and then replaying the perfect inputs back as a single segment. This is also known as a TAS, T-A-S, which I sometimes use to demonstrate glitches that are extremely difficult to perform. Everything shown here is possible, and my friends and I have done each of these independent glitches in real time, except for maybe the Super Hammer LZS, that one is kinda ridiculous. But it's not fair to expect a human to perform at this continuous level of precision. So to answer the question, can we complete Dry Ruins without collecting any keys? Yes, we can, but will you complete Dry Ruins without keys? Most likely not. I'd like to give a shout out to Devin, Food is Good, Bobo, Twinkie, Kung Fury, Fluffy Dog, Tupai, Glitch Umbreon, Dainty, Tomosumi, Balderon, Jacob Russell, and Ian Heath, and to everyone else supporting me. It really means a lot to me, guys. Thank you so much for watching.